In the sun-scorched fields of Texas, a deadly miscalculation is about to turn a peaceful farm into a killing field. When a ruthless outlaw gang targets what they think is just another vulnerable single mother's homestead, they're about to learn the hard way that appearances can be lethal. Emma Harrison isn't your typical farmer. She's one of the deadliest snipers ever to wear the Green Beret, with confirmed kills that would never appear in any official record. Her call sign was Shadow, a ghost in the wind who could take a target from 2 miles out in conditions that would make other shooters stand down. This isn't just another story about criminals picking the wrong victim. This is about how the most notorious gang in Texas learned that a mother protecting her child is dangerous, but a mother with special forces training is deadly. When they came for her farm, they never realized they were walking into a trap set by someone who'd hunted far more dangerous prey in the Hindu Kush. What follows is the story of how one woman would dismantle an entire criminal empire in just 72 hours, using nothing but her farm, her rifle, and the skills that made her a legend in the Special Forces community. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning frost crunched under Emma Harrison's boots as she made her final perimeter check of the farm. Dawn painted the Texas sky in watercolor shades of pink and gold, but her eyes never stopped scanning the tree line. Old habits died hard, especially ones that had kept her alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan. "Mom, bus is coming in 10, Riley's voice carried from the farmhouse, followed by the slam of the screen door. Emma smiled, her 12-year-old daughter's morning chaos, a stark contrast to her own methodical routine. "Breakfast is on the table, baby. Don't forget your science project." She kept her voice light, casual, masking how her eyes tracked the dust cloud approaching from the south. Just Miguel in his old pickup, right on schedule. His timing never varied by more than 2 minutes, one of the reasons she'd hired him 6 months ago. The farm hadn't been her first choice for a fresh start, but after losing John in that last deployment, she'd needed somewhere quiet to raise Riley. Somewhere with clear sightlines, multiple escape routes, and enough distance from neighbors to maintain privacy. The realtor had called it isolated. Emma had called it tactically sound. Miguel's truck rattled up the drive as Riley burst out of the house, backpack bouncing. The young farmhand gave a friendly wave, his eyes sharp despite his easy smile. He'd worked on enough farms to know this one was different. Most farmers didn't install military-grade motion sensors disguised as ordinary fence posts. Most mothers didn't move like they were constantly ready for an ambush. "Misha, your lunch!" Emma called, tossing a paper bag with the precision that had once put rounds through targets at 1,500 meters. Riley caught it without looking. She'd grown up catching things her mother threw, developing reflexes that impressed her gymnastics coach but worried her teachers. "Thanks, Mom! Love you!" Riley sprinted for the bus, pigtails flying. Emma watched until she was safely aboard, noting the driver, Mr. Peterson, 7 years on this route, the other children, 12 today, all regulars, and the slight irregularity in the engine's idle that she'd have to mention to the school board. "Morning, Miss Harrison," Miguel called out, already heading for the tractor. "Starting on the south field today?" "Change of plans," Emma replied, her tone casual, but her mind calculating angles and exposures. "Let's work the north field instead. Better visibility." The south field bordered the old Anderson property, recently sold to investors whose paperwork was just a little too perfect. Miguel nodded, understanding more than he let on. He'd served 4 years Marines before trading his rifle for a tractor. They never talked about it, but there was a recognition, a shared awareness that came from knowing what it meant to live with constant vigilance. Emma headed inside to review the farm's accounts, her laptop positioned to keep the driveway in view. The numbers weren't good. 3 years of drought had hit everyone hard, but being a single mother with a mortgage meant she had less room for error than most. The letter from the bank sat unopened on her desk, but she could guess its contents. The same investment group that bought the Anderson place had been buying up struggling farms across the county. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sheriff Martinez. "Heads up! 2 more farms sold this week. Buyers getting aggressive with holdouts." Emma deleted the message, muscle memory from years of operational security. Jake Martinez had been a ranger when she'd been a beret. Now he wore a badge instead of stripes, but he still knew how to read a tactical situation. And this situation was starting to feel like the build-up to an operation. Through her window, she watched Miguel working the field, his movements precise despite his deliberately relaxed posture. They both noticed the black SUV driving past too, slowly, to be just lost. Third time this week. Same vehicle, different plates. Emma's hand unconsciously brushed the hidden compartment under her desk, where her modified M24 sniper rifle lay disassembled but ready. She'd chosen this life to give Riley normalcy, stability, a chance to grow up without the shadow of war. But as she watched another unmarked vehicle pass her gate, she knew that choice might not be hers to make much longer. Just a farmer, she whispered to herself, the same words she'd repeated when she'd traded her rifle for a tractor, her camo for canvas work shirts. But her fingers still traced the hidden rifle compartment, and her eyes never stopped scanning for threats. Because deep down, she knew. You could take the woman out of the Special Forces, but you could never quite take the Special Forces out of the woman. Riley found the medal by accident, buried in a box of old photos while searching for something to use in her family history project. The Green Beret itself she'd seen before. Mom kept it in a shadow box high on her office wall. But this medal was different. Distinguished Service Cross, her mother's name engraved beneath. "Mom?" Riley's voice carried uncertainty as she descended the stairs. "What's this?" Emma looked up from cleaning her shotgun, officially for coyotes, though she'd never actually shot one, and felt time compress. The medal caught the afternoon light, sending her back to a mountainside in Afghanistan, where the air was thin and the stakes were absolute. "That's part of the past, baby." Emma carefully set down the shotgun. "Before the farm, before you. But they don't give these to just anyone." Riley's voice held a mix of awe and confusion. "We learned about them in history class. They're for extraordinary heroism in combat," Emma finished softly. "Yes." The memory surged unbidden. The whisper of wind through her ghillie suit, the weight of the M24 against her shoulder, 6 hours motionless as her team extracted a high-value target. The shot, 1,147 meters, accounting for wind and elevation. A record, they'd said later, one that officially didn't exist. "Is this why you can hit a tin can at the end of the driveway without looking?" Riley asked, sitting beside her mother. "Why you always know when someone's coming before they get here?" Emma smiled, remembering Riley at age 7, amazed by her mother's magic tricks of awareness. Some of it, mostly it's just practice, paying attention. And the scars. Riley's hand ghosted over Emma's forearm, where faint lines told stories of close calls and harder choices. "Rock climbing accident," Emma said automatically, the cover story worn smooth with repetition. But Riley was older now, sharper, more like her mother than either of them realized. "Mom, I'm 12, not stupid. Rock climbing doesn't leave scars like that. And rock climbers don't wake up at night reaching for weapons that aren't there." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken truths. Through the window, Emma watched Miguel adjusting the irrigation system, his movements showing his own military background. "You could take the soldier out of the war. Your father," Emma began carefully, "was more than just a soldier who died in combat. We were both part of something special, elite. I was one of the first women to—" She paused. "Old habits of operational security warring with maternal honesty. To what?" Riley leaned closer, eyes bright with curiosity. "To earn the Green Beret, to qualify as a Special Forces sniper, They called me Shadow, because by the time you knew I was there, it was already too late. The sound of gravel crunching under tires interrupted the moment. Sheriff Martinez's patrol car pulled up, his arrival triggering memories of another life when they'd worn different uniforms, but shared the same mission. "Jake!" Emma nodded as he approached, noting how his casual stance belied his tactical assessment of the surroundings. Once a ranger, always a ranger. Emma. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Riley, looking more like your mama every day." Riley beamed, but Emma saw the shadow crossing Jake's face. "Inside, baby, homework." "But Mom, now Riley." The tone brooked no argument, not Mom's voice, but Shadow's. Riley went, clutching the medal, questions burning in her eyes. "It's getting bad, Emma," Jake said once Riley was out of earshot. "Henderson's place was just the beginning. These investors, they're not what they seem. 2 farmers who refused to sell had accidents this week." "Accidents," Emma repeated, the word bitter in her mouth. "Brake lines, electrical fires, nothing provable." Jake's hand rested on his service weapon, an unconscious tell. "They're moving your way, testing responses, probing defenses." "Like Kandahar," Emma said softly, "before the offensive." The Wilson family farm burned on a Tuesday. Emma stood at her property line, watching smoke curl against the morning sky 3 miles out. Through her spotting scope, she counted 4 fire trucks, 2 police cruisers, and 1 black SUV that didn't belong. "Third fire this month," Miguel said quietly, appearing at her side. Like her, he'd learned to move silently years ago. Wilson was one of the holdouts. Emma lowered the scope, her mind mapping patterns. The Wilson place controlled access to the county's main water source. The Anderson farm commanded the highest ground. Her own property sat at a crucial crossroads. None of these facts were listed in property records, but someone with tactical training would spot the strategic value immediately. "They're isolating the resistant ones," she murmured, "creating pressure points." Her phone buzzed. A group text. From Martha Chen at the general store, part of the informal network of farming families that shared news and warnings. Wilson saying electrical fault. Insurance won't cover it. Buyers already made an offer, half what they offered last week. Emma deleted the message, muscle memory from years of operational security. Through her scope, she watched the black SUV's occupants, 3 men, military bearing, 2 alert for insurance adjusters. One scanned the surroundings with the systematic precision she recognized from counter-sniper training. "Miss Harrison." Tommy Beck's young voice carried across the field as he rode up on his bike. At 15, he did odd jobs for most farms in the area. Today, his casual appearance couldn't hide his urgency. "Mom sent me to ask if you got any extra feed to spare. Our delivery didn't show up again." Translation: the Beck farm was being squeezed. "Third family this week to have suppliers mysteriously cancel deliveries. Tell your mom I'll bring some by this afternoon," Emma replied, reading the fear behind Tommy's forced smile. The Beck's farm was next to hers. Losing them would expose her eastern flank. Inside, Riley was getting ready for school, her movements carrying the same unconscious grace as her father's. She looked up as Emma entered. "The Wilsons' place?" "Electrical fire," Emma said carefully, "like the Hendersons and the Patels." Riley's voice held an edge that reminded Emma too much of herself. "Mom, I'm not stupid. This isn't random." "No," Emma thought, "you're definitely not stupid. You're your father's daughter too." Her burner phone, a habit she'd never dropped, vibrated. A text from Jake. "Meeting tonight. County Line Bar, 8 p.m. They're making moves we can't ignore." Emma studied the kitchen calendar covered in Riley's activities. Soccer practice, gymnastics, study group, all carefully scheduled, creating patterns, predictability. In another life, she'd known better than to be predictable. "Miguel," she called out the window. "Need you to check the irrigation lines, all of them." He nodded, understanding the real message. "Check for surveillance, weak points, potential entry routes." The school bus appeared at the end of the drive, and Emma felt the familiar tightness in her chest. Every time Riley left, every time she became a moving target. No, stop thinking like an operator. She's just going to school. But as she watched Riley board the bus, Emma's mind automatically catalogued details. The driver, armed security background, vetted. The route, 3 alternate paths if needed. The other children, potential complications in an evacuation scenario. Just a mom, she whispered to herself. Just a farmer. The smoke from the Wilson place caught her eye again. Through the kitchen window, she watched the black SUV finally leave the scene, moving with purpose, testing responses, probing defenses, classic insurgent tactics. Her fingers found the burner phone again, hovering over contacts she hadn't used in years. Numbers that could connect her to people who understood what it meant to fight from the shadows. But making those calls would mean admitting this wasn't just about saving her farm. It would mean accepting that the peace she'd built for Riley was an illusion. The sound of Miguel's tractor starting broke her reverie. He was checking the west field first, their most vulnerable approach vector. Good man, Emma's hand brushed the hidden compartment under the kitchen sink, where her backup piece waited. Above it, Riley's latest art project hung on the fridge, a family portrait showing mother and daughter in front of their farm. Simple, peaceful, worth protecting. The burner phone buzzed again. Jake. Confirmed. Same group hit 3 counties. Professional operators, military trained. Emma deleted the message, but her mind was already shifting, analyzing, planning. These people thought they were dealing with desperate farmers, isolated targets they could pick off one by one. They hadn't counted on finding a Green Beret among the sheep, and they were about to learn why her old unit had called her Shadow. Not because she hid in darkness, but because by the time you saw her, it was already too late. They came at noon, when the sun was highest and shadows were scarce. 3 black SUVs rolling up Emma's driveway in a convoy formation that screamed military training. Through her kitchen window, she noted their spacing, their approach angle, the way they positioned their vehicles for quick egress. These weren't businessmen, they were operators. "Miguel," she spoke quietly into her radio, "take your lunch break, now." She watched him casually drive off in his truck, knowing he'd circle around to their prearranged observation post. Good man, always followed protocols without question. 5 men emerged from the vehicles. Their suits were expensive, but they moved with the unmistakable rhythm of men used to wearing tactical gear. The leader, tall with silver hair and cold eyes, carried himself like someone used to commanding special operations teams. Emma counted 4 concealed weapons just in their front rank. "Ms. Harrison?" The leader's smile was practiced, professional. "I'm James Wheeler, with Horizon Development Group." He extended his hand. Emma wiped her hands on her work jeans before accepting the handshake, playing the role of a simple farmer. But she noted how his grip tested for calluses, for strength, checking if she was really what she seemed. "We've been looking to invest in properties in this area," Wheeler continued. "Your farm has certain features that interest us." "Not interested in selling," Emma replied, maintaining the rehearsed persona of a stubborn but ultimately harmless single mother. "Got too much invested here." Wheeler's smile tightened fractionally. Behind him, one of his men spoke quietly into a radio. 2 others had drifted apart, flanking positions, standard infiltration pattern. "Okay, Ms. Harrison, I don't think you understand the opportunity here. We're prepared to offer significantly above market value. 3 million, cash. More than generous for a farm in your situation." The threat was subtle but clear. Through her kitchen window, Emma saw Riley's school bus approaching. Bad timing. "My situation?" She kept her voice neutral, but her mind was calculating angles, distances, response times. A single mother struggling with debt. Wheeler's voice carried false sympathy. It must be difficult managing alone. Accidents happen on farms, equipment failures, fires. He glanced meaningfully toward the Wilson place where smoke still stained the horizon. The bus stopped at the end of her driveway. Riley stepped out, then froze, sensing the tension. "Stay there, baby," Emma called out, her voice calm but carrying the command presence that had once directed Special Forces operations. Riley, thank God, recognized that tone and stayed put. Wheeler's eyes narrowed at the shift in her voice. One of his men moved subtly toward Riley. "That would be a mistake," Emma said softly, letting shadow slip into her tone. Her eyes met Wheeler's, and for just a moment she let him see behind the mask, let him glimpse what his men were actually dealing with. He took an involuntary step back. 15 years of operating in the deadliest places on Earth had taught Emma how to project lethality without moving a muscle. "Riley, inside. Now." This time, she used her full command voice. Riley sprinted past the men, disappearing into the house. "Interesting," Wheeler said quietly. "You're not quite what you seem, Miss Harrison." "Neither are you, Mr. Wheeler. Or should I use your real name, your call sign maybe?" His expression flickered, surprise, then reassessment. "You have 24 hours to reconsider our offer." He turned to leave, then paused. "Though I should warn you, our next conversation won't be nearly so pleasant." "Looking forward to it," Emma replied, letting him hear the predator in her voice. As the SUVs pulled away, Emma watched through her scope as Miguel tracked their departure. Her phone buzzed. "Jake." "They made contact?" "Yes," she texted back. "They're professionals. Probably ex-special operations, and they just made their first mistake." "What's that?" Emma's reply was simple. "They threatened my daughter." Emma waited until Riley was asleep before opening the hidden safe behind her closet's false back panel. The burner phones inside hadn't been touched in years, but muscle memory had her checking them monthly, keeping batteries charged. Old habits. Life-saving habits. She dialed the first number from memory. 2 rings. Smokey's Bar and Grill. The voice was female, bored, looking for an old shadow. Emma's voice shifted harder, professional. 3 seconds of silence. Authentication. Sierra Hotel Alpha Delta Oscar Whiskey 779er. Stand by. 30 seconds later, a familiar voice. "Shadow, been a long time." "Ghost." Emma smiled grimly. "Captain Sarah Ghost Rodriguez, her former spotter. Remember that favor you owe me, Kandahar?" "Shit, Shadow, that bad. Professional operators, ex-military. They're threatening farms to force sales. Just made the mistake of threatening my daughter." "Your position?" "Isolated. Defensive terrain. Good sightlines. Could use someone who knows how to watch my back. Text me the coordinates. I can be there in 18 hours. Emma ended the call, moving to the next number. 20 minutes later, she had 4 former teammates en route, but this wasn't Afghanistan or Syria. This was home, with her daughter sleeping just down the hall. Her laptop showed the property's surveillance feeds. Miguel's handiwork, far more sophisticated than typical farm security. Movement at the perimeter caught her eye. Sheriff Martinez's patrol car, lights off. "Clear," she transmitted on their preset frequency. Jake entered through the kitchen door, carrying files. "Got background on your visitors? James Wheeler doesn't exist before 5 years ago, but I ran facial recognition through military databases." He spread photos across her table. Former Delta, went private sector. Now he works for people who want things done quietly. How many farms in total? 17 across 3 counties, all strategic locations. They're building something big, Emma. Something that needs territory and privacy. Emma's tactical mind pieced it together. Drug distribution. They're creating a corridor, using legitimate businesses as cover. buying or burning out anyone who won't sell. A noise from upstairs, Riley turning in her sleep. The sound dragged Emma back to her current reality. She wasn't just a soldier anymore. Every decision now affected her daughter. "I've got people coming," she said quietly. "Good people, operators." Jake nodded. "You're going to fight. They didn't leave me a choice, but I need you to do something for me." She wrote down an address. "If things go bad, if I give the signal, Riley needs to disappear. There's a safe house. I'll protect her like she's my own," Jake promised. "But Emma, are you sure about this? We could call in the FBI, DEA. And how many more farms burn while bureaucrats build a case?" She shook her head. "They threaten my baby, Jake, on my property, in front of my house." Her voice carried an edge he remembered from missions they'd rather forget. They drew the lines. Now they'll learn why that was a mistake. Her phone vibrated. A text from Ghost. "Team assembled. Equipment inbound, like old times." But it wasn't like old times. Back then, she'd only had herself to worry about. Now... "Mom?" Riley stood in the doorway, sleep rumpled. "I heard voices. Just talking with Uncle Jake, baby. Go back to bed." But Riley's eyes were sharp, taking in the files, the maps, the way they were standing. Those men today, they're going to come back, aren't they? Emma met her daughter's gaze, seeing John's strength there. "Yes. Are we running?" "No, baby, we're not running." Emma's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "This is our home, and it's time you learned what that really means." Jake watched the exchange, recognizing the moment a mother's protection transformed into a warrior's resolve. Wheeler's team thought they were dealing with a simple farmer, a single mother they could intimidate or eliminate. They were about to learn the difference between a shadow and a shadow. Ghost arrived first, rolling up Emma's driveway in a mud-splattered pickup just before dawn. Sarah Rodriguez hadn't changed much, still wire-thin, still moved like a cat, still carried enough weapons to start a small war. The two women embraced. Briefly, warriors greeting. "Nice spread," Ghost said, her eyes already mapping fields of fire. "Good elevation, multiple fallback positions. You always did know how to pick your ground." "The barn's our command center," Emma replied, leading her through the pre-dawn darkness. "Miguel's already modified it. More than it seems." Inside, the old barn had been transformed. Surveillance feeds covered one wall, showing every approach to the property. Tables held topographical maps of the surrounding area. A weapons cache lay hidden beneath removable floorboards. "Your farmhand did this?" Ghost's eyebrow raised. "He's got skills. Force recon, 4 tours. Doesn't talk about it, but his work speaks for itself." Riley's voice carried from the house. "Mom, can't find my soccer cleats." "Under your bed, baby," Emma called back. Then to Ghost, "We maintain normal routine. They're watching, analyzing patterns. Smart, using daily life as cover for preparations." Ghost studied the surveillance feeds. "Your daughter, she understand what's coming?" "More than I'd like. She's her father's child." Ghost nodded, remembering John. "Team's 2 hours out. Jackson's bringing the special equipment you requested." Emma allowed herself a small smile. Jackson had been their demolitions expert. His special equipment would give Wheeler's team some unpleasant surprises. The morning unfolded in carefully orchestrated normalcy. Riley caught the bus. Miguel worked the fields, each pass with the tractor marking defensive positions and fields of fire. Emma hosted what appeared to be a ladies' coffee morning. If anyone noticed that her guests moved like predators and carried concealed weapons, they didn't mention it. "South Ridge is your best sniper position," Ghost noted, appearing to sip coffee while studying the terrain. "Good coverage of all approaches." "Already set up a hide," Emma confirmed. "Modified deer blind. Locals are used to seeing hunters up there." The rest of the team arrived in 1s and 2s throughout the day. Jackson, with his easy smile and lethal expertise. Cooper, their communications specialist, posing as a visiting cousin. Martinez, the team medic, setting up in what used to be the grain storage shed. By afternoon, Emma was running her first training session with the neighboring farmers. They'd come under the pretense of discussing crop rotation, but their eyes were serious as she taught them basic tactical awareness. Movement patterns matter, she explained, demonstrating how to walk without creating predictable targets. Vary your routines, watch for observers, trust your instincts. Tommy Beck, the teenager who'd warned her about the feed deliveries, proved a natural. Like hunting, he said, grasping the concepts quickly, reading signs, staying aware. Exactly. Emma watched him practice moving from cover to cover. You've got a gift for this. Miguel coordinated the farm's physical preparation, teaching the locals how to fortify buildings without appearing to do so. Hay bales became cover positions. Irrigation pipes concealed trip sensors. Every defensive measure hidden beneath the appearance of normal farm life. Riley returned from school to find her mother teaching Mrs. Chen from the general store how to use her phone to coordinate emergency warnings. The 12-year-old took it all in with sharp eyes. "Can I help?" she asked later, watching Emma clean weapons that officially didn't exist. Emma hesitated. Every instinct screamed to protect her daughter, shield her from this world, but Riley's eyes held the same determination she'd seen in John's. "First rule," Emma began, "is awareness. Always know what's around you. Where are the exits? Who's watching? What feels wrong?" Riley nodded solemnly. "Like you taught me with soccer. Always know where your teammates are, where the ball might go." Exactly. Emma felt pride mixed with sadness. Her daughter shouldn't have to learn these lessons so young, but the alternative was worse. Ghost appeared in the doorway. "Perimeter sensors are live. Jackson's got his surprises in place. Cooper's encrypted our comms." She paused. "They're watching. 2 vehicles, North Road." Emma nodded. Wheeler's team, analyzing their patterns, looking for weaknesses. Let them watch. Let them think they saw everything. "Mom?" Riley's voice was quiet but steady. "Are we ready?" Emma looked at her daughter, seeing not just a child, but a survivor in training. "Almost, baby. But they're not just facing me anymore." She gestured to the farm where her team and the local farmers moved with growing confidence. They wanted to fight a single mother. Instead, they're facing a community, and we're just getting started. They came at midnight, just as Emma predicted. 4 men moving like shadows through her cornfield, their thermal imaging equipment making them confident, too confident. 4 tangos, northwest approach, Ghost's voice whispered through Emma's earpiece from her position in the modified deer blind. "Military formation, professional gear." "Confirmed," Emma replied softly, watching through her night vision scope. She lay prone, in a hidden position that offered coverage of the entire north field. "Wheeler's testing our defenses. Let them get closer." The intruders moved with practiced precision, but Emma noted their mistakes. They were used to operating in war zones, not farmland. They didn't know that Miguel had subtly modified the irrigation trenches to channel movement exactly where she wanted it. "Mom," Riley's voice came through on the private channel. "Movement on the cameras. I see them, baby. Stay in the safe room with Martinez." Emma's heart tightened, knowing her daughter was watching everything through the surveillance system. But Riley had insisted on being useful, monitoring the feeds while protected in the reinforced basement. The intruders reached the first trip sensor. Instead of triggering an alarm, it silently marked their position on Emma's tactical display. Jackson's work, letting them think they were undetected while tracking their every move. "They're moving toward the barn," Ghost reported. "Standard search pattern." Emma allowed herself a small smile. The barn, where they'd made sure to leave. Just enough evidence of activity to draw attention. where Jackson had prepared a special welcome. "Hold positions," Emma commanded. "Let them commit." The four men converged on the barn's side entrance. Their thermal imaging would show it empty. Exactly as planned. The leader reached for the door. "Now," Emma whispered. Multiple things happened at once. Motion sensors triggered the barn's lighting system, instantly blinding the men's night vision gear. Simultaneously, pre-positioned irrigation sprinklers activated, creating a disorienting spray that played havoc with their thermal imaging. In the chaos, Emma moved. Years of training took over. She covered the distance to the first man in seconds, her movements fluid and lethal. A precise strike to the throat silenced his warning. A leg sweep took down the second before he could raise his weapon. Both disabled without a shot, fired. The third man managed to turn, bringing up his rifle. Emma was already inside his guard. The rifle clattered away as she applied a joint lock that ended with a dislocated shoulder and a muffled scream. The team leader proved more capable. He dropped his useless thermal gear and moved to hand-to-hand combat with skill that confirmed Emma's suspicions about their background. Special forces, probably Delta or SEALs. They exchanged a flurry of strikes, each recognizing the other's training. He was good, but Emma had spent years being underestimated, using it to her advantage. He struck with lethal precision. She flowed around the attack like water, redirecting his force. When he overcommitted to a strike, she ended the fight with a combination that would have made her hand-to-hand combat instructors proud. "Clear," she transmitted, standing over four incapacitated professional operators. "Mom?" Riley's voice carried concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby. Just some uninvited guests who needed a lesson in manners." Ghost's voice held grim amusement. "Four down, no shots fired. Still living up to your reputation, Shadow." Emma zip-tied the intruders efficiently, noting their gear, top-of-the-line equipment, modified weapons, everything pointing to serious backing. Wheeler wasn't playing games. "Signal Wheeler's observation team," she ordered, knowing they were watching from somewhere. "Let them see us loading their men into Sheriff Martinez's patrol car." Jake arrived minutes later, maintaining the fiction that this was just local law enforcement handling trespassers. But his eyes told Emma everything as he surveyed the scene. "Not bad for a simple farmer," he said quietly. "They'll come harder next time," Emma replied, watching the patrol car drive away. "This was just a probe, testing our capabilities." "And what capabilities did they learn about?" Emma's smile was cold in the darkness. "Only what I wanted them to see. They think they just ran into a well-prepared defender with military background. They don't know about the rest of the team, the community's involvement, or our full preparations." Dawn was approaching as Emma finally returned to the house. She found Riley waiting, her young face serious. "You're not just good at this, are you, Mom?" Riley asked. "You're like, really good." Emma pulled her daughter close, smelling the lingering scent of her shampoo. "I was the best, baby, and they're about to learn why." In the distance, she heard vehicles starting, Wheeler's observation team retreating to report what they'd seen. Let them come back. Let them think they understood what they were facing. They had no idea what a mother protecting her child was capable of. And Emma was just getting started. Wheeler's response came at dawn, not with violence but with a phone call. Emma watched her burner phone vibrate on the kitchen table, Riley's half-eaten breakfast forgotten beside it. "Impressive demonstration." Wheeler's voice carried grudging respect. "Though I think we both know you weren't operating alone." "Just protecting my property." Emma kept her voice neutral, but her free hand signaled Cooper to start the trace. "Let's be professional about this, Shadow." The use of her call sign confirmed her suspicions. They'd made her background. "My employers are willing to double the offer. 6 million plus relocation assistance. No one needs to get hurt." Emma watched through her window as Ghost's team rotated defensive positions. On the surveillance feeds, she saw Miguel coordinating with local farmers as they implemented her backup plans, looking like nothing more than normal morning activity. "Interesting choice of words," she replied, "considering what happened to the Wilson place and the Hendersons and the Patels. Business necessities. But you're different. You understand the world we come from, the rules we operate by. I understand you threatened my daughter." A pause. "A regrettable tactical error, one we won't repeat." "No," Emma agreed, her voice carrying an edge that made Riley look up from her homework. "You won't." Cooper gave her the signal. "Trace complete. Wheeler was operating from a compound 30 miles north. This is your final chance, Shadow. Take the money, walk away, or we stop being professional about this." Emma's reply was cold. "You stopped being professional the moment you targeted families. Now you deal with the consequences." She ended the call as Ghost entered, her expression grim. "We've got movement. Multiple vehicles heading toward the Beck farm. Looks like they're changing tactics." Emma's tactical mind processed the implications. "They're going after our neighbors first, trying to isolate us." "Mom." Riley's voice was steady, but her hands gripped her pencil too tightly. "The Becks. Tommy." "Already on it, baby." Emma clicked her radio. "Miguel, implement Protocol 3. Within minutes, the community warning system activated under the guise of normal activities. Mrs. Chen's delivery truck made unscheduled stops at threatened farms. The local school bus changed its route, subtly evacuating children. Farmers moved equipment into blocking positions that looked random, but followed Emma's carefully planned defensive strategy. "They've got at least 30 men," Ghost reported, studying satellite imagery. "Professional operators, heavy weapons, moving in company strength." "Good." Emma's smile was predatory. "Means they're scared." Jackson arrived with final equipment. Loads. Explosives disguised as agricultural supplies. Martinez finished converting the old grain silo into a medical station. Cooper's communications network, hidden in ordinary farm equipment, linked every defending position. "Your old team," Riley said quietly, watching the preparations. "They all came because of you?" Emma paused in checking her rifle. "They came because sometimes you find people who become more than teammates. They become family, like our neighbors, the ones helping us." "Exactly, baby. Wheeler thinks he's just fighting a few ex-soldiers. He doesn't understand what community means." The radio crackled, Jake's voice. "Multiple bogies entering county jurisdiction, heavy vehicles, armed personnel. They're not hiding anymore." Emma moved to the barn's tactical display, her team gathering around her. The pieces were in motion now, the storm about to break. "They'll hit the Beck place first," she analyzed. "Try to make an example. Show the community what happens to people who help us." "Already evacuated," Ghost confirmed. "Left some surprises for them, though." Emma nodded. Jackson's surprises would buy time, make them cautious. Every delay helped their defense preparations. "Cooper, make sure civilian channels are clear." "I want chatter about normal farm business only." "Miguel, coordinate with the local militia. Keep them hidden until needed." "Ghost, your team knows their positions." Each acknowledgement came with the precision of professional operators, but it was Tommy Beck's young voice on the radio that caught her attention. "Miss Harrison, Dad says to tell you we're ready. Everyone's ready." Emma felt pride mixed with concern. These weren't soldiers. They were farmers, parents, neighbors. But they'd chosen to stand together, protecting their homes with everything they had. Through the window, she watched Riley helping Martinez organize medical supplies. Her daughter was learning lessons no child should need to know, but showing a strength that made Emma's heart ache with pride. "Ghost," she called softly. "If this goes bad..." "Riley gets to the safe house," Ghost finished. "We all know the protocol. She's our priority." Thunder rolled in the distance as storm clouds gathered, or maybe it was the rumble of heavy vehicles approaching. Emma checked her weapons one final time, feeling the familiar calm of combat settling over her. Wheeler thought he was bringing the storm. He was about to learn he was driving straight into one instead. The attack started small, precise, psychological. Power lines mysteriously failed, internet went down, cell service became spotty. One by one, Wheeler's team cut the farm's connections to the outside world. Standard siege tactics, isolate before engaging. But Emma had anticipated this. Solar panels, hidden generators, and satellite communications kept their systems running. Every attempted isolation met a prepared countermeasure. "They're probing the Beck property now," Ghost reported, from her observation post. "Four-man team looking for our evacuated civilians." Emma watched through her tactical display as Wheeler's men found their first surprise. Jackson's modified farming equipment, rigged to look like abandoned vehicles, contained more than just old engine parts. The explosion was small but effective, designed to discourage rather than damage. "Mom!" Riley's voice came through the command center's speakers. She was monitoring communications from the reinforced basement. "Mrs. Chen says, they're blocking the county road. No deliveries getting through. Acknowledged, baby. Just like we planned." Emma kept her voice steady, professional. Her daughter needed her strength now. "Cooper, implement supply protocol Delta. Their hidden supply lines, established through old hunting trails and back roads, would keep them stocked." The local farmers had spent weeks secretly stockpiling resources, preparing for exactly this scenario. The radio crackled, Miguel's voice tense but controlled. "Two teams approaching the south field, using our own irrigation trenches for cover." "Let them," Emma replied, a cold smile forming. "Jackson, charges set. Those trenches can become very unfriendly very quickly." Wheeler's voice cut through their encrypted channel. He'd found their frequency, as expected. "Impressive setup. Shadow, solar power, backup communications, supply lines through the old logging trails. You've thought of everything." Emma nodded to Cooper, who began broadcasting their prepared false communications through secondary channels. "Let Wheeler think he was hearing their real tactical traffic. You're not the only one who knows siege." "Tactics," she replied calmly. "Though targeting civilians, that's sloppy, not very professional." "Professional ended when you chose farmers over soldiers." Wheeler's voice hardened. "These people aren't warriors. They'll break." As if in response, Tommy Beck's young voice came through the local channel. "Movement near the old barn, Ms. Harrison. Just like you said they'd come." Emma's chest swelled with pride. These farmers might not be soldiers, but they knew their land, knew every angle, every approach, every hiding spot. Wheeler was about to learn the difference between occupying territory and defending home. Then day progressed with a deadly chess game of moves and counter-moves. Wheeler's teams probed their defenses, looking for weaknesses. Each time, they found prepared responses. Automated farm equipment activated at strategic moments, disrupting their movements. Irrigation systems turned open ground into impassable mud. Every abandoned building concealed surprises. "They're getting frustrated," Ghost observed, as another team withdrew from a failed probing action. "Making mistakes." Emma watched Wheeler's men repeatedly regroup, their professional precision gradually eroding as nothing worked as expected. But she knew better than to get overconfident. Frustrated operators were dangerous operators. "Mom," Riley's voice again, but different now, worried. I think I see someone by the old oak tree, where Dad used to." Emma's blood ran cold. The oak tree had been John's favorite spot, where he'd taught Riley to climb before his last deployment. It was also the one approach she hadn't fortified. Too many personal memories. "Ghost, cover me!" she commanded, already moving. Through her scope, she caught the glint of a sniper's lens. They were using her own memories against her, setting up in the one spot she'd left emotionally vulnerable. The shot came not from Emma, but from Tommy Beck's treehouse, the hidden position they'd prepared together during climbing lessons last week. The sniper's rifle went flying as non-lethal rounds found their mark. "Target neutralized," Tommy reported proudly. "Just like you taught us, Ms. Harrison. Watch the special places. They mean something to everybody." Wheeler's voice returned, less confident now. "Using children as spotters, Shadow. That's low, even for—" "No," Emma cut him off. "I'm teaching them to defend their homes. You're the one trying to steal them." Night was falling as another probing attack withdrew in failure. Emma watched Wheeler's teams regroup, knew they'd be back stronger. But her people were ready. These weren't just defensive positions anymore. This was community, family, home. Through the command center window, she saw Riley helping Martinez organize medical supplies, her movements showing the same focused precision Emma had once learned in combat zones. Her daughter was becoming a warrior, not because she wanted to, but because the world had left her no choice. Wheeler thought he was laying siege to a farm. He didn't understand he was attacking a family. And Emma had learned long ago, nothing fights harder than family protecting its own. The truth broke like a thunderclap across the community. It started with a local news report, former Green Beret among holdout farmers, but quickly became something more. Wheeler had leaked her service record, probably hoping to frighten the neighbors into abandoning her. Instead, it had the opposite effect. "Is it true?" Mrs. Chen asked during their morning strategy meeting, her eyes bright with something between awe and understanding. "You were the first woman to qualify as a Green Beret sniper," Emma confirmed, checking the store's delivery routes for the day, their covert supply lines disguised as normal business. "It wasn't something I advertised." All this time, Tommy Beck's father spoke up. "When you were teaching us hunting skills and farm security." "She was training us," Tommy finished, pride evident in his voice, "making us ready." The barn was packed with farmers, ranchers, and townspeople, no longer just neighbors, but a makeshift militia. Emma watched them process the revelation, waiting for the fear, the rejection. Instead, she saw determination solidifying into something stronger. "Wheeler's people hit the Martinez farm last night," Jake reported, spreading photos across the tactical table. "Tried to burn them out. Would have worked, except old man Martinez had already reinforced his barn exactly like you showed us," Tommy's father finished. "Fire didn't catch, and his broken irrigation system somehow drenched the attackers." Emma allowed herself a small smile. Her lessons, disguised as friendly advice, had turned every farm into a defensive position. Now her students understood why. The radio crackled, Ghost's voice urgent, 3 vehicles approaching from the north, heavy weapons visible. Emma moved to the surveillance feeds, the gathered community members falling into practiced positions. No longer pretending these were just farming tasks. "They're targeting the supply routes," Cooper reported from his communications station, "trying to starve us out." "Let them try," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "My store's basement has enough food for the whole county. Just like you suggested last harvest, Emma, in case of emergency." Wheeler's voice cut through their channel. "Getting sloppy, Shadow. Letting civilians fight your battles? How many casualties are you willing to accept?" The community members stiffened at his tone, but Emma saw not fear in their eyes, only anger. "Those civilians you're threatening?" she replied coldly. "They're veterans' families, farmers who've weathered droughts and floods, parents protecting their children. You want to talk about will to fight?" As if to emphasize her point, Tommy Beck's voice came through. "Ms. Harrison, those guys watching the North Road, they didn't notice us kids on our bikes. Got some real good pictures of their positions, just like you taught us about reconnaissance." Riley, monitoring communications, added, 3 more farms confirmed ready. Mom, the Anderson brothers say their hunting club is in position. Emma watched the tactical display as green lights appeared across the county. Each farm a fortress, each family a fighting unit. Wheeler had expected to isolate them. Instead, he'd united them. Your military record is impressive, Shadow. Wheeler transmitted. But you're putting these people in danger. Their blood will be on your hands. No. Mrs. Chen grabbed the radio before Emma could respond. We choose to stand. This is our home, not your playground. Mom? Riley's voice was private channel now. I found something in Dad's old footlocker, his letters. He wrote about you, about what you did in Afghanistan, how you saved that whole village when nobody else would help. Emma closed her eyes, remembering. A remote village, a warlord's forces, and a single sniper who refused to abandon innocent people. Just like now, you didn't just teach us to defend our farms, Tommy said quietly. You taught us to defend each other. Through the windows, Emma watched Wheeler's forces positioning for another assault. But now they faced not just a former Green Beret and her old team, they faced an entire community that knew how to fight back. They think knowing my background changes things. Emma addressed the gathered farmers. Makes you afraid, makes you doubt. But here's what Wheeler doesn't understand. I didn't train you because I was Special Forces. I trained you because I'm one of you. A parent, a farmer, someone protecting home. The radio carried reports of Wheeler's teams moving into position, but Emma saw no fear in the faces around her. These weren't soldiers following orders, they were neighbors defending their own. Wheeler had drawn his battle lines, never realizing he'd helped forge something stronger than any military unit, a community united in defense of its own. Wheeler's first major assault came at midnight, precisely when Emma expected. What he didn't expect was how prepared they were, or how deep the community's defenses really went. Multiple vehicles, heavy weapons, Ghost reported from her observation. Post. They're moving in force this time, at least 40 operators. Emma watched through her tactical display as Wheeler's teams approached what they thought were the weak points in the community's defenses. Each position had been carefully crafted over months of subtle preparation. Remember when you helped us rebuild the grain silos last spring? Tommy's father asked, manning his assigned position. Those reinforced walls weren't just for storage, were they? And my delivery routes, Mrs. Chen added, coordinating supplies through her store's network. You weren't just being efficient with the scheduling. Every farm connected, Emma confirmed. Every family able to support the others. That's not military strategy, that's community. The radio crackled with focused activity as Wheeler's forces hit their first surprise. The Anderson brothers' hunting club turned out to be former Marines. The broken tractors strategically abandoned around various farms concealed defensive positions. Even the teenage dirt bike riders Wheeler's men had ignored turned out to be expert scouts, coordinating intelligence through Riley's communication hub. Contact west, Miguel reported calmly. They're trying to flank through the irrigation channels. Just like you predicted, Mom. Riley's voice carried the same focused precision Emma recognized from her own operations. Activating protocol. 7. The irrigation system, modified over months of careful work, suddenly transformed the planned assault route into impassable terrain. Wheeler's professional operators found themselves bogged down, their careful tactical approach disrupted by farmers who knew every inch of their land. You've been planning this since you arrived, Ghost observed, picking off targets with non-lethal rounds from her hidden position. Every casual suggestion, every community project. She was building something. Bigger than defenses, Jake added, coordinating with local law enforcement. She was building a network. Through the command center's windows, Emma watched the community's true strength emerge. Farmers using their equipment with tactical precision. Teenagers on dirt bikes running reconnaissance with military efficiency. Even the local book club turned out to be a sophisticated intelligence-sharing network. Second team approaching the Chen store, Cooper reported. "Let them come." Mrs. Chen's voice was steel. "My basement's not just for storage anymore." Wheeler's frustrated voice cut through their channel. "This is your last chance, Shadow. These aren't soldiers. They're not trained for this." Emma's reply was interrupted by Tommy Beck. "Actually, sir, we've been training for months. You just didn't notice." The night erupted in coordinated defense. Every approach Wheeler's men tried had been anticipated, prepared for, and countered. The farmers' knowledge of their land, combined with Emma's tactical training, proved devastating against conventional military approaches. "Remember, non-lethal only," Emma commanded. "We're protecting our homes, not starting a war." "Too late for that," Riley commented, monitoring the feeds. "But you never wanted us to be soldiers, did you, Mom? This is something different." Emma felt pride surge as she watched her daughter coordinate the community's responses. Riley was right. This wasn't military operation. This was something unique. A community defending itself with everything it had. "They're pulling back," Ghost reported, "taking heavy casualties, mostly from their own mistakes. Your terrain modifications are brutal, Shadow." "Not my modifications," Emma corrected. "Ask Tommy about those drainage ditches, or Mrs. Chen about her store's new layout. I just helped them see the potential in what they already had." Wheeler's voice returned, but the professional calm was cracking. "What kind of operation are you running here, Shadow? These are civilians." "No," Emma replied, watching her neighbors work together with practiced efficiency. "These are people defending their homes, and you're just starting to understand what that means." The tactical display showed Wheeler's forces in retreat, their professional assault undone by farmers who'd turned their everyday skills into sophisticated defense. Each civilian had contributed something vital. Mrs. Chen's delivery network became a supply line. Tommy's dirt bike club provided reconnaissance. Even the local quilting circle turned out to be mapping patrol patterns in their seemingly random walks. "Mom," Riley called out, "I think I know why you did it this way, why you trained us without telling us." "Why's that, baby?" "Because the strongest defense isn't just about tactics or weapons. It's about community. About everyone knowing they're part of something bigger." Emma watched her daughter coordinate another successful counter to Wheeler's attacks, seeing John's strategic mind combined with her own determination. She'd come here looking for peace, for a safe place to raise her child. Instead, she'd found something more powerful, a community that, when threatened, revealed its own hidden strengths. Wheeler thought he was fighting a former Green Beret. He was actually fighting an entire community that had learned to be its own best defense. The realization hit Emma like a physical blow. She stared at the tactical display, watching Wheeler's forces move with sudden, precise knowledge of their defensive positions. No more probing attacks or wasted efforts. They were striking exactly where it would hurt most. "They know our patterns," Ghost's voice was tight. "All of them." "Mom." Riley's voice carried controlled panic. "They just breached the Andersons' backup route, the one nobody knew about except the delivery network," Emma finished, her mind racing. The pieces clicked together with cruel clarity. Cooper locked down all channels, now. But it was too late. Their encrypted communications erupted with static as their security protocols failed. Through the command center windows, Emma watched. 3 of their hidden supply caches explode simultaneously. "Hello, Shadow." The voice on their command channel wasn't Wheeler's. It was Sarah Chen's, Mrs. Chen, who'd helped coordinate their entire supply network. "Sorry about this, but business is business." Emma's hands clenched as she remembered every detail she'd shared, every defense she'd coordinated through the store's delivery routes. She'd trusted Sarah, made her central to their strategy, perfect position for a mole. "How long?" Emma's voice was deadly calm. "Since before you arrived," Sarah replied. Wheeler's people needed someone established in the community, someone trusted. The store was perfect. Everyone talks to their local shopkeeper. Ghost's voice cut in. Multiple hostile teams moving on prepared routes. They know all our fallback positions. Emma's mind shifted to combat mode, already adapting. Riley, Protocol 0. Now. Her daughter's response was instant, proving all those practice drills weren't wasted. Within seconds, their real backup systems activated. The ones Emma had never shared with anyone outside her core team. The ones she'd prepared because some habits of paranoia ran too deep to ignore. Did you really think, Sarah's voice carried, false sympathy, that you were the only one who could plan long-term? Wheeler's operation is bigger than you know. The farms are just the beginning. Through her tactical display, Emma watched Wheeler's forces moving with precise knowledge of their defensive setup. But Sarah had made a critical mistake. She assumed she knew all of Emma's plans. "Ghost, go dark," Emma commanded. "Everyone, fall back to secondary positions." "The ones we never wrote down." Sarah's laugh cut through the static. "Your people are scattered, Shadow. Your supplies compromised. That paranoid backup planning you're counting on. I've spent months mapping every detail of your operation." "No," Emma replied softly. "You mapped what I let you see. Riley, execute Blackout 7. Across the county, pre-positioned equipment activated. Not the obvious backup systems Sarah had discovered, but the real contingencies. The ones Emma had prepared. With Ghost's team, tested in secret night operations with only her most trusted allies. "Mom?" Riley's voice was private channel now. "What about the neighbors, the ones who trusted us?" "Already moving," Emma assured her. "Why do you think we ran all those emergency evacuation drills with the school? Trust goes both ways, baby. They trusted us with their farms. We trusted them to be ready." Sarah's confident tone faltered as reports reached her. The defensive positions she'd compromised were emptying, but not in panic. The community was falling back in coordinated stages, using protocols even she hadn't known existed. "Impossible," Sarah breathed. "I saw every plan, every preparation." "You saw what a mother shows to protect her child," Emma replied. "But you forgot what a Green Beret knows. Always have plans within plans." Through her scope, Emma watched Wheeler's forces charging into empty defensive positions, finding nothing but automated responses and false targets. The real operation was already shifting, adapting, evolving into something Sarah couldn't have anticipated. "Ghost," signaled Jake. "Time for the county response we actually planned for." Because Sarah had made the oldest mistake in intelligence, she'd assumed she had all the information. She didn't know that Emma's true strength wasn't in the plans she shared, but in the ones she kept hidden. Even as her original defense network crumbled, Emma allowed herself a cold smile. Sometimes the best plans were the ones your enemies never saw coming. The command center had relocated to the old storm cellar beneath the Beck farm, one of many fallback positions Emma had prepared but never recorded. Through surveillance feeds, she watched Wheeler's forces occupy her empty farmhouse, finding nothing but shadows and false leads. "They're frustrated," Ghost reported from her new hide. "Sarah's intel led them into a trap. Every document they're finding is outdated or planted." Emma allowed herself a grim smile. "Amazing what people assume about a mother's priorities. They thought I'd document everything, share every plan. They forgot what I really am." "A Green Beret?" Riley asked, monitoring communications from her station. "A sniper," Emma corrected. "Patient, methodical, always 3 steps ahead." The tactical display showed Wheeler's operations spreading thin, chasing false targets across the county. Each compromised position they seized revealed only more questions, more misdirection. "Time to shift phases," Emma announced. "Riley, signal the community channels. Activate the real network." Across the county, seemingly random events began unfolding. The high school football team's morning practice became a coordinated reconnaissance operation. The local truckers' regular routes transformed into supply lines. Even the church bake sale served as cover for a sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation. Sarah knew our military plans, Emma explained to her gathered allies. But she never understood our civilian ones, never saw how deep the community's roots really go. Tommy's voice crackled over their secure channel. "Ms. Harrison, my dirt bike club's got eyes on their supply lines. The real ones, not the ones they think we know about." "Good boy," Emma praised. "Ghost, coordinate with the kids. They know every back trail in the county." Wheeler's frustrated voice cut through. "They're compromised channels." "You're only delaying the inevitable, Shadow. We own this territory now." "Do you?" Emma's reply was cold. "Sarah mapped our military defenses perfectly. But did she tell you about Mrs. Peterson's quilting circle? The one that meets every Thursday?" Through her scope, Emma watched Wheeler's men discovering too late that the seemingly innocent quilting group had spent months mapping patrol patterns, identifying vulnerabilities, and coordinating community responses. "Or Tommy's paper route," Emma continued, "the one that just happens to cover every major access point in the county. The revelation hit Wheeler's operation like a thunderbolt. They'd prepared to fight soldiers disguised as farmers. Instead, they found themselves facing farmers who'd learned to think like soldiers, but better because they were defending their homes. "Mom?" Riley's voice carried new confidence. "The Anderson Brothers Hunting Club is in position, and the church choir practice just reported movement on the North Ridge." Emma watched her daughter coordinate civilian operations with military and precision, proving that some lessons went deeper than tactical training. "You see it now, don't you, baby? Why we let Sarah think she knew everything? Because she was looking for military plans," Riley nodded, "not community ones." Through their new channels, reports flowed in. Wheeler's forces, spread thin, chasing compromised positions, found themselves mapped and monitored by an invisible network of civilians. Every move they made was tracked by paper boys, observed by grocery delivery routes, reported by school bus drivers. "They're starting to panic," Ghost reported with satisfaction, realizing they don't actually control anything. Emma's hand found her rifle, not her military weapon, but her old hunting rifle, the one she'd used to teach Riley about patience, about waiting for the perfect moment. "Sarah gave them our defensive plans," Emma said quietly. "So now we show them our offensive ones, the ones that don't exist on paper because they're written in something stronger, community trust." Wheeler's operation had expected to fight a military target. Instead, they were about to learn why you never underestimate a community protecting its own, especially when that community was trained by someone who understood that the strongest weapons aren't always the ones you can see. Dawn painted the horizon blood red as Emma gathered her allies in the Anderson Brothers barn. The tactical display showed Wheeler's forces regrouping, abandoning compromised positions for a final, concentrated assault. "They're done playing games," Ghost reported, her voice tight. "Heavy weapons, armor, professional strike teams, at least 60 operators moving into position." Emma studied the deployment patterns, seeing the anger in their aggressive positioning. Wheeler's men had been humiliated, their careful intelligence proven worthless, their superior numbers turned against them by civilian observers they'd never considered threats. "They'll come in full force," Emma analyzed. "No more subtle approach. They're angry, frustrated, and that makes them dangerous. But predictable," Riley added from her communications station, making her mother smile. The girl was learning. "Exactly, baby. Ghost, status of civilian evacuation. All non-essential personnel relocated to safe zones. Defensive teams in position. The church basement is prepped for medical support." Through the windows, Emma watched. The community's final preparations unfold like a deadly choreography. The Anderson brothers, hunting blinds, concealed sniper positions. Tommy's dirt bike team had rigged early warning systems throughout the local trails. Even the school bus depot had been transformed into a command and control center. "Mom," Riley's voice held that steel edge Emma recognized from her own missions. "Sarah's trying to access our backup channels. She knows about the storm cellar network." "Let her," Emma replied coldly. "That was never our real fallback system." The gathered defenders shared knowing looks. Every compromised position had been a calculated sacrifice, leading Wheeler's forces exactly where Emma wanted them. "They're moving their command center to the old Miller farm," Miguel reported, "setting up for a major operation." Emma nodded. The Miller property was perfect for a military command post, which was exactly why she'd let Sarah discover its strategic value months ago. "Remember," Emma addressed her gathered allies, "Wheeler's men are professional operators. They're trained, equipped and angry, but they're fighting for money. We're fighting for home." Tommy's father spoke up, checking his modified farming equipment. "They think they know our land because they studied maps, but we know it because we've worked it, lived it, bled for it. And they've never fought civilians who shoot better than soldiers," Ghost added with grim satisfaction. "Your marksmanship training program was impressive, Shadow." Emma allowed herself a small smile, remembering all those hunting classes and target shooting competitions that had turned farmers into expert marksmen. "Jake," she clicked her radio, "law enforcement. Status? State police are conveniently delayed by multiple road incidents," the sheriff replied. "Giving us a clear field for 4 hours. After that, we'll be done by then," Emma assured him. Through her scope, she watched Wheeler's forces making their final preparations, noting their predictable military precision. They're following standard assault protocols, three-pronged attack, heavy weapons support, tactical reserve, just like you said they would, Riley observed. That's why we prepared countermeasures they'd never expect," Emma finished. "Because soldiers think like soldiers. But we've learned to think like something else." The tactical display showed the pieces falling into place. Wheeler's forces were massing for what they thought would be an overwhelming assault. They had the numbers, the weapons, the training. What they didn't have was the understanding of what they were really facing. "Final preparations," Emma commanded. "Ghost, your team has overwatch. Miguel, coordinate the mobile units. Tommy, your scouts know their routes. Riley, communications." "Locked down," her daughter reported crisply. "Real channels masked by false traffic. Community network standing by." Emma felt a fierce pride watching her daughter coordinate complex operations with the same focus she showed in soccer games. This wasn't the life she'd wanted for Riley, but her girl had risen to it with extraordinary strength. "Remember," Emma addressed her people one final time, "Wheeler's men are expecting to fight a military operation. They're prepared for soldiers, for tactical responses, for standard defensive protocols. What they're not prepared for is us," Tommy finished, his young voice carrying the determination of his entire community. Through her scope, Emma watched the sun rise over her adopted home. Wheeler thought he was launching a final assault. Instead, he was walking into a trap, laid not just by a former Green Beret, but by an entire community that had learned to defend itself in ways no military manual could teach. "Mom?" Riley's voice was private channel now. "We're ready." Emma chambered around in her rifle, not for killing, but for protecting everything she loved. "Yes, baby," she replied softly. "We certainly are." The attack began at first light, exactly as Emma predicted. Wheeler's forces moved with professional precision, their approach textbook perfect. 3 assault teams, heavy weapons support, tactical reserve, everything by the manual. "Contact front." Ghost's voice was ice cold through the comm. Main force moving through the Miller cornfield, heavy weapons teams setting up on the ridge. Emma watched through her scope as Wheeler's men advanced, their confidence evident in their movement. They thought they knew what they were facing. They were wrong. All units, hold positions, Emma commanded. Let them commit fully. Through the tactical display, she tracked Wheeler's forces spreading into assault formation. Their movements were flawless, their coordination perfect, and entirely predictable. "Mom?" Riley's voice carried from the command center. "They're jamming our known frequencies, switching to backup channels." "Good girl." "Tommy, status of your scouts?" "In position, Miss Harrison. They don't even look at kids on bikes, just like you said." The first phase of Wheeler's assault hit empty defensive positions, finding only automated responses and false targets. Their frustration was visible as they pushed forward, searching for resistance that seemed to melt away before them. "They're moving faster now," Ghost reported. "Getting aggressive, sloppy." "Sarah's intel is burning them," Emma observed. "They keep finding our old positions, exactly where she said they'd be, making them doubt everything." Wheeler's voice crackled through. "They're compromised channels. Stop playing games, Shadow. Face us like a soldier." "But I'm not just a soldier anymore," Emma replied calmly. Riley signaled the community response. Across the battlefield, seemingly ordinary farm activities transformed into coordinated defensive actions. Irrigation systems activated, turning planned assault routes into muddy traps. Harvest equipment moved with tactical precision, channeling Wheeler's forces into prepared kill zones. "What the hell?" Wheeler's voice carried genuine confusion as his perfect military assault began unraveling. "Second team hitting the eastern approach," Ghost reported, walking right into the Hendersons' broken tractors. The disabled farm equipment, strategically abandoned days ago, concealed automated defense systems that threw Wheeler's flanking maneuver into chaos. "Western team approaching the old dairy," Miguel called out. "Time to show them why we spent so much time repairing those grain silos." Emma watched through her scope as Wheeler's Western assault team found themselves caught between automated farm systems and civilian observers they'd never considered threats. Every move they made had been anticipated, every tactical response countered by something that looked completely innocent. "Mom?" Riley's voice carried pride now. "The church ladies' prayer circle reports their Western team is completely mapped, and Mrs. Peterson's quilting club has eyes on their command element." Wheeler's frustration exploded across their channels. "What kind of operation is this?" "The kind you weren't prepared for," Emma replied. "Ghost, execute Phase 2. Across the battlefield, the community's true defensive network activated. Wheeler's forces found themselves under observation from every angle. Not by military operators, but by civilians they dismissed. Paperboys reported their movements. School bus drivers tracked their vehicles. Even the local garden club provided real-time intelligence from their morning walks. "They're losing cohesion," Ghost reported with satisfaction, breaking into smaller units trying to find real targets. Emma watched Wheeler's perfect military assault dissolve into confusion. His men were trained to fight soldiers, to counter tactical responses, to deal with military threats. Instead, they faced an entire community that had turned everyday life into an impenetrable defense. "Strike teams approaching the Anderson property," Miguel reported. "Ready for the surprise we planned?" "Execute," Emma commanded, watching through her scope as Wheeler's elite operators moved confidently toward what they thought was a vulnerable position. The routine cattle drive that had been moving through the area suddenly transformed into a precisely coordinated obstacle, cutting off their advance. Simultaneously, the local farmers' market setup created a series of blockades that looked completely innocent, but effectively trapped Wheeler's forces in exposed positions. "This is impossible." Wheeler's voice carried genuine fear now. "What are we fighting?" "Not what," Emma replied coldly. "Who?" "Riley, signal final positions." It's time to show them exactly what they're dealing with. Through her scope, Emma watched Wheeler's forces realize too late that they weren't facing a military operation. They were facing something far more dangerous, a community that had learned to defend itself in ways no tactical manual could counter. "Ready, Mom?" Riley asked, her voice steady and sure. Emma chambered around, watching Wheeler's perfect military assault crumble before civilian defenders he'd never considered a threat. "Ready, baby. Let's show them why you never threaten a community that knows how to fight back." Wheeler's frustration finally erupted into rage. His perfectly planned military assault had dissolved into chaos, his professional operators outmaneuvered by farmers and schoolchildren. Now he committed his final reserve, abandoning tactical. "Doctrine for brute force, all units, full assault." His voice cracked with fury across their monitored channels. "I don't care about collateral damage anymore. Burn it all." Emma watched through her scope as Wheeler's forces abandoned their careful coordination for aggressive pursuit. Exactly as she'd planned. "They're charging right into it," Ghost's voice carried grim satisfaction. "All that tactical training, and they're still making the amateur's mistake." "What's that?" Riley asked from her command position. "Letting anger override training," Emma answered. "Execute windmill protocol." Across the battlefield, the community's final defensive network activated. Wheeler's advancing forces found themselves caught in a sophisticated web of coordinated civilian responses. The local wind farm's massive turbines, modified under the guise of routine maintenance, created visibility-killing dust storms. Irrigation systems transformed firm ground into mud. Every farm machine, every piece of equipment, every ordinary tool became part of an interlocking defensive system. "Western team bogged down," Tommy reported from his observation post. "Those broken tractors you had us position last week, they're not getting past them." "Eastern assault stopped cold," Miguel added. "Mrs. Peterson's quilting circle has them completely mapped. They can't move without being spotted." Wheeler's voice exploded with rage. "Shadow, face me like a soldier. Stop hiding behind civilians." "I'm not hiding," Emma replied coldly. "I'm leading. Ghost, execute Phase 3. The battlefield transformed again. Wheeler's forces, already struggling against civilian obstacles, suddenly faced coordinated resistance from multiple directions. The local hunting club, positioned in concealed blinds, demonstrated their marksmanship with disabling shots. The high school track team's morning practice became a sophisticated flanking maneuver. Even the church choir practice proved to be a synchronized observation post. "This is impossible." Wheeler's voice carried genuine fear now. "What kind of operation is this?" "The kind you never understood," Emma answered, watching his forces fracture under community pressure. "You thought you were fighting one Green Beret. Instead, you're facing an entire community that learned to defend itself." Through her tactical display, Emma tracked Wheeler's disintegrating command structure. His men, trained for military threats, found themselves overwhelmed by civilian defenders they'd never considered dangerous. Every attempt to regroup was countered by ordinary people doing seemingly ordinary things that proved devastatingly effective. "Mom?" Riley's voice carried steel-hard confidence now. "Wheeler's command element is isolated, just like you predicted." "Good. Girl. Tommy, signal your bike team. Show them what those paper route reconnaissance runs were really mapping." Wheeler's command group, trying to coordinate their failing assault, suddenly found their position completely exposed. Every escape route, every fallback position had been mapped and countered by teenagers on dirt bikes they'd ignored as irrelevant. "They're running," Ghost reported with satisfaction, "breaking into small groups, trying to wait." Her voice sharpened. "Wheeler's taking a personal team toward the school. He's found Riley's position." Emma's blood ran cold, but her voice remained steady. "He's desperate, making his final mistake. All units execute Omega Protocol. The battlefield exploded with coordinated action. Wheeler's escape route suddenly filled with farm vehicles, each positioned with tactical precision. The local bus, Depot's morning preparation, became a blocking maneuver that would have made Emma's military instructors proud. Even the weekly farmers' market setup transformed into a sophisticated containment operation. "You think civilians can stop us?" Wheeler's voice carried desperate bravado now. "We're trained operators." "No," Emma replied, her scope finding him. As he realized too late, he'd been channeled exactly where she wanted him. "You're just soldiers. We're community." The trap closed with beautiful precision. Wheeler's team found themselves caught between Emma's sniper position and the coordinated response of an entire community. Every civilian vehicle, every piece of farm equipment, every ordinary citizen became part of an interlocking defensive system that no military training had prepared them to face. "It's over, Wheeler," Emma announced, her shot disabling his vehicle with surgical precision. "Your men are contained. Local law enforcement is 3 minutes out, and you never even saw. What really beat you?" "What? What are you?" Wheeler's voice shook as he watched his perfect military operation completely dismantled by farmers and schoolchildren. "I'm a Green Beret who learned something more important than military tactics," Emma replied. "I learned that the strongest defense isn't about weapons or training. It's about community, about people protecting their homes together." Through her scope, Emma watched Wheeler's final surrender as police vehicles approached. Around him, his professional operators were being contained not by soldiers, but by determined civilians who'd learned to defend themselves in ways no tactical manual could counter. "Mom," Riley's voice carried pride now. "We did it. All of us. Together." "Yes, baby," Emma replied, watching her community secure their homes with the confidence of people who'd discovered their own strength. That's what Wheeler never understood. He thought he was fighting a soldier. Instead, he fought an entire community that learned to be its own best defense. The sun rose fully over the battlefield, illuminating not destruction, but the triumph of ordinary people protecting their homes. Wheeler's professional operators, now in custody, watched in bewilderment as farmers, teachers, and schoolchildren coordinated their final containment with military precision. "Shadow," Ghost's voice carried deep respect. "I've fought in special operations across 4 continents. Never seen anything like this." "Because it's not military," Emma replied, watching Riley coordinate the community's final movements with the same focus she showed in soccer games. "It's something stronger, something Wheeler never understood." "And what's that?" Ghost asked. Emma smiled, watching her neighbors secure their homes with the confidence of people who discovered their own power. "That the strongest force isn't a weapon or a tactic. It's a community that learns to protect its own." As law enforcement began processing Wheeler's captured operators, Emma saw not just victory, but transformation. These weren't just farmers and townsfolk anymore. They were defenders who'd discovered their own strength, their own capability to protect what mattered. And at her command station, Riley continued coordinating their final operations with the steady confidence of someone who'd learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes not from weapons or tactics, but from people standing together to protect their home. A week after Wheeler's arrest, Emma stood at her property line watching the sunrise. The farm looked ordinary again, equipment in place, fields tended, daily routines restored. But everything had changed. The FBI's finishing their investigation, Jake reported, joining her with coffee. "Wheeler's operation was bigger than we thought. Drug corridors, money laundering, connections to 3 cartels. Taking him down disrupted operations across 6 states. "And Sarah?" Emma asked quietly. "Talking. A lot. Turns out being outsmarted by the community she betrayed left a mark." Through her scope, Emma watched her neighbors going about their morning routines. But now she saw the subtle differences, the confidence in their movements, the awareness of their surroundings, the quiet coordination that hadn't existed before. They're still running the defense networks, she observed, not because they have to, because they want to. You taught them more than just tactics, Jake replied. You taught them to be community. Riley emerged from the house, moving with the fluid grace that reminded Emma so much of John. But there was new strength there too, a confidence earned in fire. The Anderson brothers are maintaining the observation posts, Riley reported, naturally falling into tactical assessment. Tommy's bike team is still running regular reconnaissance routes, and Mrs. Peterson's quilting circle. She smiled. Well, let's just say nothing happens in this county without them knowing. Emma felt fierce pride, not just in her daughter's growth, but in what their community had become. They weren't soldiers. They were something stronger. People who'd learned to protect their own. Ghost and the team headed out this morning, Jake said, though I noticed they left some equipment behind. They'll be back, Emma replied confidently. They found something here worth protecting. The morning sun painted the farmland gold, highlighting the subtle signs of preparation that now wove through everyday life. Not military defenses, but community awareness. Not tactical positions, but neighbors watching out for neighbors. Mom! Riley's voice carried new understanding. We're not going back to pretending to be ordinary, are we? Emma pulled her daughter close, remembering the peace she'd sought here, the normal life she'd wanted to provide. But normal didn't mean defenseless. Strong didn't mean militant. No, baby, she answered. We're going to be something better, something Wheeler never understood. Community, Riley finished, watching their neighbors coordinate morning activities with unconscious, tactical precision. Emma smiled, seeing not just farmers and townspeople, but defenders who'd discovered their own strength. Wheeler had threatened her land, thinking he faced a single Green Beret. Instead, he'd awakened something far more powerful, a community that had learned to be its own best defense. Time for morning patrol? Riley asked, already knowing the answer. Always, Emma replied, shouldering her rifle. Not for war now, but for protection, for home. Together, mother and daughter began their rounds, watching their community embrace not just safety, but strength. Wheeler had tried to take their land by force. Instead, he'd helped forge something unbreakable, a family of defenders, bound not by weapons or tactics, but by the simple, powerful truth that home was worth protecting. And in this quiet corner of Texas, that protection now wore not a military uniform, but the simple, proud face of community.